Just over 3 years ago, SRAM shook up the cycling world when it launched its Red eTap wireless group set. Now, they're looking to make a similar impact with this next generation Red eTap AXS. If looks are anything to go by, they will definitely do it. But there is a lot more going on here than just the aesthetics. We're going to start by running through some of the highlights.
Firstly, it builds on the established wireless eTap technology. You can now connect it up to the new AXS smartphone app via Bluetooth to customize the functionality. It promises wider gear ratios and smaller jumps between the gears, something they have called X-Range. To do that, SRAM have added an extra 12th sprocket at the back and also changed the chainring sizes up front. They've redesigned the chain by adding a flat top, which SRAM say makes it quieter and stronger, despite being slightly narrower. The rear derailleur has a hydraulic damper on the arm to reduce chain slap and allow you to run it 2x, or for the first time at eTap, 1x. There is an integrated power meter option. There is a rim brake version as well as this disc version, and it's launched on the same day as a mountain bike Eagle AXS version, including dropper post, which all uses the same wireless protocol. Wireless Shox Reverb AXS dropper post on your gravel bike? If you like.
Clearly, there is a lot going on, so let's go back to the beginning. When eTap was first launched, people raved about the performance, the simplicity, the intuitive shifting. One or two people were inevitably a little bit cautious about the wireless element, both from a hacking perspective and also reliability, but now 3 years down the line, we know that both of those worries are completely unfounded. It seems super reliable. My own set has worked faultlessly for 3 years. Now, the way it functions is that the rear derailleur acts as the master in this system. You then pair it up to the shifters and the front derailleur using SRAM's own wireless protocol. So it's not AMP+ and it's not Bluetooth. Now, that much has remained the same in that it is still wireless and it still uses the same protocol. But why is it so different? Well, I mean, you look at it for a start, don't you? And it screams, I am different. But why does it look the way it looks? Ultimately, gear ratios. That's what it comes down to. It doesn't sound sexy, it's probably not, but they are super important. You get your gear ratios right and it allows you to pedal comfortably, both up super steep climbs and when tearing down the other side. So what SRAM have done is broaden the range of the cassette at the back and then reduced the chainring sizes up front and reduce the gap between them. They've kept it consistent to 13 teeth across all the options. So now, instead of 53-39, 52-36, or 50-34, you have 50-37, 48-35, or 46-33. Now, for a die-hard cyclist like myself, that sounds kind of weird. It is certainly smaller, but because the range of the cassette is bigger, you still have a higher top gear than you would have on a traditional cassette, because you now have a smallest sprocket with just 10 teeth as opposed to 11. Look, I told you it wasn't sexy, but it is still kind of cool. Ultimately, what you need to remember is that you have an easier bottom gear because the chainring is smaller up front. You have a higher top gear because you have a 10-tooth sprocket at the back. And because you have a 12th sprocket in there, you actually have smaller jumps between the gears at the back than a traditional cassette. Now, there are 3 options available to you in terms of sizes. You've got a 10-26, a 10-28, and a 10-33, which is the largest cassette that this road derailleur will accommodate. The cassette still fits in the same space as an 11-speed cassette, so in order to get that extra 12th sprocket in there, then the gaps between them have been made narrower. What that means is that there is no new hub spacing, but in order to get that 10-tooth sprocket on there, an old school free hub body will not work. So you need to use an XDR driver. That in itself is not new, so there are plenty of options available out there when it comes to hub choices. Now, because those gaps between the sprockets have been made narrower, you therefore, of course, need that redesigned chain. But SRAM has said that rather than thinking of it as an afterthought, they've actually designed it at the heart of the system, then gone out from there. The idea being that a holistic approach means that you can improve the shifting quality, you can improve the durability, and also you can make the drivetrain even quieter. And one of the ways they've done that is by actually making the plates on the chain narrower. And so despite the smaller gaps on the cassette, there is still more space, they say, either side of the chain. And that's one of the most significant factors in reducing the noise. And they've also added a hard chrome finish to the inside plates of the chain, which they say boosts the durability. Because it's narrower, SRAM have then added that extra material on the top of the chain. So as well as looking cool, and I think it really does look cool, it also, they say, makes the chain stronger. Now, having started with that chain, they then moved out to look at the teeth, and they have been sculpted and shaped to improve durability and also efficiency, they say. It's most obvious on the 1x chainrings, which are now a road version of the ones on the Eagle mountain bike group sets. Having read up about those, it seems like improved durability has been one of the big advantages there. And apparently the design helps to spread the load from the chain more evenly around the chainring. Now, as well as the 1x chainrings getting a total redesign, the 2x chainrings have as well. The first point is that there is a complete absence of chainring bolts, and that's because the big ring and the little ring are both machined out of the same piece of material. Now, before you think, well, crikey, that might be quite tough to replace, do bear in mind that SRAM are boasting 50% improvement in its durability.
And when it is time to replace, if you get in touch with them, they will give you one at half price, as well as recycling your old one.
The idea behind the design is that firstly it sheds weight and also boosts stiffness, which is another factor you'd think in the improved shifting quality at the front derailleur. Chainring stiffness has a massive bearing on that. Now, in total, that new design sheds about 80 grams over the previous chain set. This one, as you can see, has that integrated power meter, and I really do mean integrated because it too is machined from the same piece of material. The strain gauges are based here in the Spider, which doesn't really look like a Spider anymore, but in total that adds just 36 grams. Now, there are two options available, one with power meter and one without, but SRAM have designed it so that the one without is easily upgradable to that Quark power meter should you wish. Because it's on the Spider, it means that you have an accurate measurement of your total power output, as well as it being able to extrapolate your left and right legs as well. Let's move on to the rear derailleur now, which, surprise, surprise, has had an almost total redesign as well. That faster shifting, remember, and also the Orbit chain management system. But if you don't mind, when we are talking about it, can we go for a spin? Lovely roads, but a little bit colder up in the mountains than it was by the coast. Anyway, clutches are not new on rear derailleurs. SRAM launched their first on a mountain bike group set back in 2012 when they also debuted 1x. Now, the idea is that they keep your chain under control and give you a near silent ride on bumpy ground, and they do that by resisting forward motion of the derailleur arm when it's responding to bumps, but without loading the drivetrain with loads of extra resistance, because it's not actually pulling back. So SRAM only ever intended it for use with 1x group sets because you can feel a little bit extra resistance when you're shifting chainrings with a clutch derailleur. But this one, the Orbit, is different because it doesn't have a roller bearing clutch. It's got a fluid damp system, which allows the derailleur arm to move unimpeded in slower velocities, so like when you're changing gears, but when it's moving faster, i.e. responding to bumps, then it loads it up with extra resistance, thereby keeping your chain under control. Now, a lot of you, I'm sure, probably never thought you needed a clutch on a road bike, but I suspect it's probably a little bit like disc brakes, in that if you try it, you won't really want to go back. And let's face it, with many road bikes these days having gravel tendencies, not to mention the gazillion gravel bikes out there anyway, for which this group set is designed for both, it of course makes sense to therefore end up with some kind of chain management system. It will allow you to ride away from tarmac in near silence, not to mention saving your paintwork. Very cool too. Now, as I mentioned earlier, with a 1x specific chainring on, you can use the same rear derailleur and run a single chainring setup without any fear of your chain coming off. Now, long-time viewers will know I'm a big fan of a 1x setup, so I'm quite excited about that. Now, in use, you do get a sense that the Orbit is contributing to the feeling of silence you get from this drivetrain. Not on smooth tarmac like this, of course, but anytime you hit a pothole or a section of bumps, there is a definite absence of a quite familiar noise. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Orbit isn't the only thing that SRAM have done to the rear derailleur. They say they've sped up the shifting. Now, that's not something I ever felt was particularly lacking from the first generation, but also not something that I'd say no to either. And apparently they've done it by changing the chips in the shifters as well as in the rear derailleur, and also changing the motor too. And actually it's not just the rear derailleur, the front derailleur gets the same treatment. So one of just several ways in which they've sped that shifting up. Of course, remember, we've got the stiffer chainrings, and we've also got that smaller gap between the chainring sizes, so down from 16 teeth to just 13 teeth. And one last tweak to that front derailleur is to the actual shape of it. So because you've got this Orbit chain management system, SRAM have designed the front derailleur to be able to be used on a gravel bike, so with fatter tyres. You can actually squeeze a 42mm wide tyre in there, so you can run a 2x gravel bike with that silent drive chain. I'm conscious that we spent a lot of time talking about the hardware, but we've yet to touch on one of the other big stories, the AXS app that lives on a smartphone. Basically, you connect up all the different components on your bike to your phone really easily by pressing the AXS button, and it connects via Bluetooth. You then authorize communication with the master in the system, the rear derailleur, remember, and hey presto, it's then on your phone. Now, what do you do with it? Well, a bunch of things actually. Firstly, you can change how it shifts. So there is a sequential button, meaning that you can hand over control of your front derailleur to AXS. So all you need to think about is shifting into easier or harder gears, and it handles what it shifts and when. Or if you still want control of your front derailleur, but you want to delegate those little compensation shifts you need to make every time you change chainrings, then you can tell this to do exactly that, and you can choose whether you want 1 or 2 compensation shifts. And it's really quite clever because you need to tell it exactly what cassette you're using, and it will then tailor exactly how it operates with its sequential shifting. You can also configure the controls, so changing what each button actually does. So on your road bike, for example, you might want to shift using your right lever into easier gears instead of harder gears. Now, you might not use that function terribly much, but remember that the new mountain bike AXS platform has also launched, and that shares the same protocol, opening up a whole world of quite intriguing opportunities, perfect for the new breed of off-road drop handlebar bikes. So you can pair an AXS Eagle rear mech, cassette, ring and chain on, and you've got super low gears. And bear in mind as well, there is also a Shox Reverb AXS dropper post, and you can choose which button on your handlebars operates that one. It is a brave new world, I'm not gonna lie. SRAM are calling these new breed of mongrel bikes mullet bikes because it's business at the front and party at the back. Something that I personally am down with. Well, what else is there to tell you then? Yet more, would you believe? The SRAM Dub bottom bracket standard that they launched for mountain bikes has now transferred onto the road as well. The idea behind that, firstly, so the SRAM have got control over bearings and so forth to improve durability, they say, but also to simplify things. So one axle standard should fit threaded BB30, PF30, PF86, BB Right, BB386, probably more, although would you believe it, there are that many standards that they're still producing the older GXP diameter in order to fit Trek's BB90 and also Italian threaded bottom brackets. One other point to mention is that your old eTap is not compatible with the new eTap, so you can't use your old shifters with the new rear derailleur or vice versa. I haven't talked about the brakes yet, although that's with good reason because they haven't really changed at all, with the exception of these new disc rotors that look pretty rude. The shifters have also remained essentially unchanged internally. There's a little bit of extra texture added to the shifter paddle and also onto the rubber lever hood. Then the only things left to mention are the weights and the prices. So SRAM are quoting 2,553 grams for the disc brake version with a power meter, and 2,139 grams for the rim brake version with a power meter. Remember, the power meter option only adds 36 grams, which is frankly quite astonishing. Now, the price. This is definitely a premium product. It retails for $4,158 for the disc brake version with a power meter. Without the power meter, it's $510 cheaper. And the rim brake version is $3,488. Now, that is clearly a big investment in a group set. But I've got to say, I really like that no expenses spared approach to product development, really pushing the boundaries irrespective of the price. And I really like it because in the cycling industry, it's been proven time and again that we benefit from trickle-down technology. So technology that's been launched at the very top price points then reaches more affordable price points too. And SRAM have said that they are developing a Force eTap AXS group set. Now, they haven't said when, but I believe we're going to get more information in April. So stay tuned for that one. In the meantime, please, if you've got any questions about this, get involved in the comment section down below. I will do my best to answer them. And of course, please make sure you give this video a big thumbs up. If you like what you see with this new group set, I will certainly be giving it a big thumbs up. If you want a bit more information about the brakes, which I've said we haven't really touched on yet, then they are the same as when they were launched in 2016. And we've got a video about that group set. So why not click straight through to it now.